So steps to use CI with AI. These are very high level steps that I do use with my clients. And when I'm coaching, I coach them along because the same thing is, and this really just comes back down to some basics when we start trying to figure things out, is determine what that problem is. What business problem are you really trying to solve? So this is where you got to ask the questions of, okay, great, you want this technology, but what's the problem that you're trying to solve? Are you trying to reduce headcount? Are you trying to just increase your efficiency so you don't have to hire additional people? Do you need to cut costs or business costs? Like, what's the business cost that you're trying to cut, or do you need, or you want to increase your market share? Those are just some very basic questions. What then also helps you to determine what the problem is, and that's where I like to use the 5 whys a lot of times. Is to start with, well, why do you want to do it, and then we get down to what they're really trying to solve. The next thing that's really important to you, just like with any project, is you got to set up that goal. So once you determine what your problem is, and that's your business case, then what is that goal you're trying to achieve? Are you really trying to increase your revenue? Are you trying to decrease overtime? Are you trying to increase your efficiency within your process? But you got to be smart about that. So SMART is just an acronym for being specific about your goal, having some type of goal that's measurable. So, if you're increasing revenue, you try to go from this revenue starting point to another point. It needs to be achievable. I would say, yeah, it's great to shoot for the stars, but let's bring it down a few notches and make sure it's achievable. But it needs to be relevant to the business problem, but it also needs to be time bound. That's one of the more important things I think to get out of this when you're setting up your goals, is to set up with a time bound so that you have something that you can work towards. Sometimes you might have to extend that time a little bit, or sometimes you will beat that time. So, but as long as you're working toward those goals, that'll help you. But the third thing here, and this is the biggest thing that I think a lot is missing sometimes when we are implementing technology, is you need to analyze your process or processes and the data. This is where utilizing those Lean Six Sigma tools is great, because you have those toolboxes to analyze all of that. The process mapping through, looking through the data, statistical analysis, all of that is there. All those tools are there for you to understand what's really going on within the business and within your data. And then once you review those processes and understand the root causes, what's going on, this is where you identify and implement those process improvements. This is also key. This is very key. Like I like to say, don't use technology to solve all the problems. Sometimes from just very basic process improvements, like implementing Poka-yoke, which is the mistake proofing, or just standardizing the work, or putting the right people in the right place, is sometimes all that's needed to see those process efficiencies really happen. Once you've done all that, then you want to make sure that all your processes are as stable and data is free of errors as you possibly can. But so the next step after all of that is to determine how to implement AI. And what I mean here is, do you need help? Do you have internal developers, or an internal RPA group or AI group that can help you with implementation within your organization? Or if maybe you're a smaller or medium-sized company, you necessarily may not have a department for that, then that's where you need to determine what type of AI. Do you need help? Do you need to go to another AI consulting firm? Or maybe you work with a continuous improvement coach or consultant who may then bring in the other layer of the AI consulting. This is, you have to determine how you're going to do that before you even start to implement AI. And that's the biggest thing is where implementing AI, as I talked before, especially my case study, is to use the simplest first. And that might just be some type of simple automation before you start implementing those advanced technologies. Another big reason why I'm also seeing sometimes where the automation or the AI or machine learning doesn't stick is because we don't train our employees, but we also just don't use change management. So one of the biggest things here, once we implemented the AI, done all this work, we have to start to sustain the gains and get people excited about this change, because change is scary to everyone. Is that we need to train them on how to use the tools, but we also need to implement that change management so we can increase that adoption rate. Just throwing the technology at the problem and not telling anybody about it and or how to use it isn't going to get them to use it. And then the other biggest thing here too is we've implemented all this great technology, but we need to set up that ongoing support for the technology, because the technology is going to evolve. Something could break. We need to set up how we're going to support that now and in the future. And that leads me here to, we have to plan for the future. This is where you've got to set up that continuous improvement plan. All of this, all these steps need to be done in order to be really successful in implementing AI. Like I said, just because we have all these new flashy tools, if we don't follow some very concrete basic steps, it's never going to be as successful as we want it to be. I've seen it in too many cases with clients where they had implemented the AI and not seeing the results they wanted. And once we took a step back and then followed these steps, they ended up becoming very successful. And you saw those in the case studies.